I'm going to tell it like it is. I'm going to be totally vulnerable and honest and real about where I'm at and the things that are going on in my life. And I'm going to make it part of the film. And I think that that's why it's not like a typical documentary. So anything, like I always say, like that fear, even standing in front of 100 RCMP with attack dogs and machine guns and helicopters, there was so much fear. But in that moment, standing in that fear, and it's like that's what warriors do. It's not that they aren't afraid, it's that they recognize it and they push through it. They do it anyways.
Kwe Nindaluizi Pam Palmater, and I'm the host of this show, The Warrior Life. I'm a lawyer, professor, author, and activist from Eel River Bar First Nation, whose motto is education for action on Indigenous rights, social justice, and protecting the planet. On this podcast, you're going to get an education of a different kind, one that's enriched by the cultures, insights, and experiences of Indigenous activists, land defenders, and water protectors on the ground, as well as Indigenous advocates of all kinds, artists, lawyers, academics, and leaders who are on the front lines of resistance, resurgence, and revitalization. And today's podcast is the first one of our new season, I guess, back in the fall of 2023. In fact, this podcast is number 152. I can hardly believe that we've done that many conversations with the most awesome people in the world. I'm really excited about this. So stay tuned. One of the most amazing people are going to join us on this podcast. All right, season opener, podcast number 152, and I can think of no better way to celebrate this monumentous occasion than with the incredible, amazing, someone I look up to, Layla Staats. Layla is literally making waves everywhere. You know how some people are like one thing, they do maybe two things? Layla is literally everything all at once. I don't even know how to properly describe her, but you can see her on the front lines as a water protector and a land defender. You can hear her singing in concerts, often with her brother Logan, and that's so cool. They're so incredibly talented as musicians. And now you can watch her again on another new documentary. I honestly have no idea how to describe that package, except to say that she's a really kick-ass warrior. And I'm so glad that you've joined me on this show. Welcome, Layla.
Nyawa, thank you for having me here. Sego, Scano, Layla Staats Yongyats, Anwara ni wagit taroden, kanyak gehaga ni wago wenjoden, oswego ni wageno. So, hello, my name is Layla Staats. I'm Mohawk, Turtle Clan, from the Six Nations of the Grand River. And yeah, I'm pumped. I didn't know this was like a season opener, no pressure or anything, right? Like, better be awesome. And it's so funny when you talk about like trying to put a name, like people always ask me like, what title can we give you? And I don't really know. Like, there's so many ways in which my life, like I'm a mom of 4 amazing kids. I'm a musician and an artist and a creator and a teacher and a speaker. And like, it's just, when I think about what I do, as long as I'm making a change, so maybe like change maker.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good one, because I was thinking, okay, how am I going to introduce her? Are you allowed to put 20 words in a row? Are you allowed to say, warrior and land defender and water protector and educator and speaker and artist and musician and how many words can I get away with at once? So I'm really glad that you introduced yourself, but I'd love to hear more about your community, because not everybody knows how awesome Six Nations of the Grand River Territory is. They have my favorite powwow, I have to say. It's like so massive, but I just love the territory. It's huge. I mean, if I look at my res, all the houses are right together. You can drive almost a mile in between houses on your reserve. So can you tell us a little bit about your home community and a bit about the Mohawk culture?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Six Nations is you think it's really big, but when you look at the original treaties of the Haldeman Treaty and you look at the land that was promised to the Haudenosaunee, it was, 6 miles each side of that entire Grand River from the source to the mouth. So now we're looking at like a nickel from the dollar. We're at about 5% of what was originally promised, and so much development around us. That's one of the things that is challenging, is when you're surrounded by development, you're surrounded by cities, and you're trying to keep this way of life that's connected to the land and the water. One of the things that on this journey that I really was, it was eye opening to me is the situations of many reserves around Turtle Island that don't have that space. I remember driving to Grassy Narrows, and you drive through, hours of beautiful, pristine crown land. And then you get to this tiny kind of postage stamp of a reserve where houses are side by side. And you're like, how is this how these people have been forced to live? So yeah, I'm very fortunate to come from such a great place. So much opportunities, like there's a lot of community engagement that I really love about our community. But I also have kind of a different story with Six Nations. I was not raised out here. I was raised in the city, and as a generational survivor of residential schools, my great grandmother went to the Mohawk Institute. So for me growing up, it was almost seen as being, a bad thing. Being Mohawk, like if people found out you were Native, you wouldn't get the job, or you would be, the victim of racism. And my grandfather, we talk about this in the new film. He really had that mentality growing up of, trying to keep us away from the culture, because it had been programmed in them to think it was a bad thing, to think that we would be at a disadvantage. So it was an interesting way to grow up. You never really knew where you belonged. And coming back to the coming back to my grandfather's land, building my home out here, living out here with my family, I had to face a lot of those fears, those insecurities, those feelings of not being accepted or fitting in or doing the right thing. So I'm really grateful to those in the community that did open their arms, elders that brought me in to share teachings and ceremonies and help my understanding. And I feel like that was critical in my path down this reclamation road, this red road, to take back what had really been taken from me long before I was born. So feeling, that connection of being Mohawk, what it means to be Mohawk, that fierceness, that fearlessness, that warrior blood that's inside of me. It has, over these last 2 years, especially in making this film, it has been woke. It is awake, it is roaring, it is ready to just to be who I am meant to be. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to talk about the film and everything that has happened over the last 2 years, because it has been a wild ride. I was just saying to you before that the last time I was here was just a couple of weeks after I was arrested out in Wet'suwet'en, and just seeing how even those progresses, those little chapters, those moments where you grow, where you heal, where you evolve, where you step into your truth. And I'm hoping that this film is going to inspire people to take that journey too.
Oh, they totally will. And, for anyone who's listening or watching this on the YouTube afterwards, you can just tell how much fire and passion and warrior just oozes from you. You don't answer any questions, just chill, like, oh yeah, my name's Layla. I do this and that. You're like, you literally live and breathe this passion. It's why I love your work and everything you do so, so much, because it's really important. And I'll also link to the previous episode where you and your brother Logan and Skylar Williams, the spokesperson for 1492 Landback Lane, was on that episode, because it was literally right after. And also 1492 Landback Lane was going on. So that original question, when I was like, yeah, so you have such a big res, I'm so glad you jumped right into the Haldeman track, because it seems like, not just metaphorically, all of our struggles are the same, but literally the people who were on 1492 Landback Lane make sure that they're out there in BC sovereign, in solidarity with the sovereign Wet'suwet'en people. So it was so important. It was so special. And I'm really glad you're here. And I know a lot of people are going to wonder, okay, you have this personal journey, just like I did. So, because of history and everything else, it's like I'm growing up off reserve, and then you come back later, and it's the people that welcome you, all your aunties and cousins, and help you really on that journey, because our separation had nothing to do with us. Like, not our fault at all, right? Like, this is really colonization in action. So how did you go from this, young girl to a young woman with all this, learning and this, heartfelt journey into everything that you do? Like, did you start out and say, well, you know what, I think I'm going to go to music school and study music, or someday I want to be a filmmaker and do awesome films? Like, how did your journey play out that way?
Honestly, I never thought I would be, making films or documentaries or any of that. I never thought that I would be, a musician. My whole life I was kind of programmed into that path of, go to school, get good grades, be a doctor. And so I kind of followed that and gave everything I had into my school. And when I went to university, got into medical science, it was just like something in my heart knew I wasn't meant to be there. Did I make the right choices? No, I started to fall off the track, right? I started to rebel. I started to, ended up dropping out of school. I ended up going down a very dark path of addiction and alcoholism and partying and, just feeling very lost in my life. And I think that had a lot to do with, being disconnected from who I was as a Mohawk woman. So it really, I think those moments when we say, who am I? Who am I? And I feel like my whole life I had let other people tell me who I was. So I remember I was sitting in our community center, and there was an event going on. And walked to the front of the room at the beginning of the event, and he started saying this speech. He started reciting these words in Mohawk, and at this time I had no understanding of Mohawk. I had no understanding of my culture or practices or protocols or ceremonies. So I just was listening, and I was like, I have no idea why he's saying these words. I don't know what they mean, but I know they're important. And something inside this, like, memory inside of me was like, you need to pay attention to whatever this is. And it's often called the Thanksgiving address. The Ohada Garuadegua translates to the words before all else. So nothing would ever happen without first acknowledging these words and this connection going through every single element of life and our relationship to it. So I started there, and I was like, something in me said, Layla, go there, follow that, ask questions, understand it. And I was embarrassed at first, like, what is this? Why don't I know what this is? And I was scared that people would judge me and say, you don't know what the Thanksgiving address is? You never heard it? And well, no, I didn't grow up. I didn't go to school out here. I didn't know anything. So I asked questions anyways. And I think that that's one of the big things in my journey is feeling that fear, knowing it's there, and doing it anyways, and realizing, like, these challenges of fear, these moments when you're afraid to do something, those are the ones that are going to make the biggest impact in your life. So I started to ask questions. I started to get a deeper understanding. And one of the mentors out here, Tom Porter, he said the Thanksgiving address is like the skeleton key that opens up this ancient knowledge. And that's what I started to feel happening. I started to feel this relationship between the water, the trees, the animals, all elements of life and earth as my family. And I started to grow that relationship and that connection. And I feel that was, that was within me the whole time. And we have this question of, am I native enough? Am I Mohawk enough? Because I can't fluently speak my language, because I don't have an Indian name, because all of these things, my quantum blood or whatever, am I Indian enough? And so when I sat with that prayer, and I really truly put myself into those moments of thanksgiving, those moments of gratitude that my ancestors were so adamant that nothing would happen, the words before everything. And I sat there. I It was like there is no measurement. I am Mohawk. I feel that. It's alive within me. And so that pushed me, that propelled me. And then I got this opportunity to make this documentary, and I thought, we're talking about boil water advisories. We're going to go around to different communities and see what their stories are. So I thought I would just kind of be like a microphone, like asking people their stories and kind of being a host, guiding you on this journey. But it quickly became very real. And sitting with these people and hearing their stories, having them open their wounds and their traumas and their tears and their lives to me, it changed me. Every single time I sat down to speak with someone, it changed me. And so that started to become very, very apparent in the film. And the more that I opened it up, and I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna tell it like it is. I'm gonna be totally vulnerable and honest and real about where I'm at and the things that are going on in my life. And I'm gonna make it part of the film. And I think that that's why it's not like a typical documentary. So anything, like I always say, like that fear, even standing in front of 100 RCMP with attack dogs and machine guns and helicopters, there was so much fear. But in that moment, standing in that fear, and like it's like that's what warriors do. It's not that they aren't afraid, it's that they recognize it and they push through it. They do it anyways.
Such an important message. And in all of what you just said, I think about everything that I've heard from Native people on or off reserve. Are they Native enough? Are they, traditional enough? Do they know enough of the language? Do they have the right blood quantum? Do they know the right people? Like the colonial system has us so mixed up that we all seem to share this insecurity of like, am I good enough? Like, what if I make a mistake? Am I judged by my mistakes forever? How is this not a normal journey? Like people talk about, when young people start to rebel, so to speak. I once heard an elder tell me like that we all do that. In the old days, pre-colonizers, you could send a man out into the woods, a young man out into the woods, and they would find their way and they would learn to deal with like all of their inner struggles. We don't have that anymore. So we're left to kind of deal with this all of ourselves. And it's just so powerful what you're talking about. And I just really admire how you can be so honest about it. Not everybody wants to be honest about whether or not they have all of these insecurities or all of these questions. We always try to project ourselves the way society expects us to be, or even our own family members. So that's really, really powerful. And I know a lot of young people will really connect with the things that you're saying. And so my question really is what came first? So you're on this journey, you reconnect with your culture. Do you say, you know what, let's start doing music, bro? Come on, Logan, let's go start doing music. Or were you into the filmmaking first? Or were you on the front lines first? Or did it all just kind of mishmash happen together?
It definitely happened first with the music. So, kind of trailing along my brother on this path of his music career and being his backup vocals, being the harmonies, being the angel in the background, as he calls me, and going on that path. And then it actually was, I remember one of the first shows, we talk about this a lot, was at a Unity Jam at Landback Lane, where several of the people that were there were threatened with being arrested just for playing music. And my brother's like, we got to go there. We're playing music for people, the land offenders. And, just seeing people that were willing to commit their entire lives to stand up for something, I was like, of course I'm going to sing. Of course we need to sing, like whatever we can do, whatever we can contribute. And then I felt like the film side of it just kind of sparked out of this knowing that I had this story going on inside of me. I started working at the Woodland Cultural Center, so I started hosting survivor stories, and I would interview survivors of the residential school, and it started to open up this, I guess, this exposure to my past, my history, my ancestors, and what actually traumas had been passed down to me that I wasn't even aware of. So I started to feel the trauma and also heal from the trauma at the same time. And I was like, man, there's probably, there's I got to get this out. Even just for me. And so I ended up getting like this crazy little $5,000 grant to do some kind of art about water. I was like, well, what art could I do? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go buy a camera and a drone, and I am going to make a little documentary. So I self-made my first documentary. I did the sound, I did the music, I did the editing, I did the filming, and it was just mostly just for me to actually put it out there of what I had learned about my history, about my past, and where I was going with this. And then I started to realize that it wasn't just my story. As I started to share it and show people, they were like, "Oh my God, you were telling my story. I could see all of my, my journey in yours as well." And it really sparked this passion that, you know, we know our ancestors taught lessons through stories. They still do. Go ask an elder a question and you'll get a story. You'll never get an answer. You have to find it in the story somewhere and actually have the patience to sit down and listen. So I felt like that was a skill that we needed to reconnect with. We needed to bring, even like our new technologies of being able to share stories online, being able to be here on YouTube, right? And hear each other, listen to each other, and really go down that path together. And so that really kind of sparked the love for film. And I started to work with some of the youth. We went up to Thunder Bay. We did a workshop, a digital storytelling workshop where we kind of help them understand their own hero journey, their own hero story, and how, they could make a documentary. If I could do it with a laptop and a Canon camera, then you could do it too. And it makes such a difference. It makes such an impact when we all just openly and honestly can tell our stories, and we feel like we have a story, we have a voice that matters. And I think that was one of the big things with these, when I was working with the kids, is seeing them listen to each other's stories and cheer each other on and learn from each other's experiences and deepen their connection just from, working on their own little hero tale. So yeah, and then I got an offer to film Boil Alert, and I know there was like a ton of different celebrities and, different Indigenous celebrities that were on the table for this film. And I sat at the table and I said, I'm not a celebrity. Nobody really knows who I am, but I feel like I have a reason for being here. I have a purpose. There is this connection that I have to the water that is undeniable. Even though like my whole concept of my first documentary was that my grandfather, he didn't teach me my ceremonies. He kind of passed down this code of shame of being Indigenous, but he always told me to protect the water. He dug these ponds, he created these ecosystems, and he would walk them every day. And so, even though he wasn't native enough in some standards, his connection to the land and water was always there, and they couldn't take it away no matter what. So I had this burning desire to like go out and fulfill what he had told me as a kid, is like, protect the water, figure out a way to get clean water, because whoever has the clean water at the end of the days, they're going to be the ones that survive and thrive. And he wanted me to go to school and be go for biology and marine biology, but I was just like, maybe that's not the exact path that I took, but I'm still protecting the water, Papa. I'm still doing it. So yeah, then I took the opportunity. And at the beginning, I had no clue what I was doing. I was very unsure, uncertain. And I just remember sitting down to my first interview. I'm like, this is a complete stranger, and I have to create a space for them to open up to me, to, that I really am listening. I really, I'm here with them. And it pushed me in a lot of ways, because I can be the introvert. I can be the one that's, observing. So to have to go out there and speak to people and ask them questions and get them to talk was new for me. But it was just, every single face. I remember every single face and every story, even, not every single one made it into the film, but they're here, they're in me, and they add to that fire that just keeps growing.
I love it, because when you think about filmmaking in general, or documentary films, some of the most famous one, I think the best documentary filmmakers our Native people, because we're humble enough to be able to sit back and not be the lead or not be controlling everything, to actually just be open to listen and to learn and to hear people tell their story without trying to make their story go in one direction or another. And I love that. So Boil Alert is your new film, and I'm wondering if we can just play a little bit of a teaser clip from that so that people can hear it. And then if you listen to this podcast later on YouTube, obviously you'll see it. But it has such powerful music and voice, and the view, the pictures, like so picturesque. Like all of it is very, very moving when you put it all together. So let's just, if I can do this right, we'll take a look at it and listen to it and see how it goes.
I was seen as an outsider coming in to the reserve. I was an outsider everywhere. They call it the Red Road when you start to learn about your Indigenous culture. Segoskano, Layla Black Youngyats, Hanawara, Ni Wagi Daroden, Ganyak Gehaga. I'm Ganyak Gehaga. I'm Mohawk. I am Mohawk. My papa always said, whoever has the clean water at the end, they're the ones that are going to thrive. Make sure that you figure out a way to get clean water. I'm looking at boil water advisories and I see every single one, First Nations, First Nations, First Nations, First Nations. And I just hear my papa in my head saying, now's the time. Our people need clean water. My hope for this journey is to understand why this is happening, as well as to discover who I am as an Indigenous woman, finding that voice within myself.
What are some of the challenges that you're facing?
We've got bad water. It's not safe to drink right now.
Checking into the hotel, first thing that I saw was the boil water advisory. Don't get it in your eyes. Don't open your mouth in the shower. It's a reality check.
How many generations has your family been drinking this water?
I know of 7 generations.
7 generations.
8 double loaders. We got 2 of them running. We've got a problem with the flow of water in them.
These people live with it every single day.
We're in California, in the U.S., off the 101. You can go on either side and you can get clean water up and down. But here on the reserve, how is it that those guys don't have clean water?
Help's not coming. Never has.
What's your position here?
I'm the acting water supervisor.
Who does all the testing?
I do.
How many people do you have working here?
Currently 2. We just got a new guy yesterday.
This is where they dispose of the uranium?
A lot of the Navajos that lived along there are now dead from cancer. That's why you don't hear about it. They don't want to tell us. You have to find out on your own.
Water is not just a resource. We are not respecting it. We are not taking care of it.
These things were told to me by the elders. Maybe in your time, you'll see this, you'll see that. I've been watching the earth and the vegetation and the birds, the insects. All of those things are telling me there are strange things happening. It's not like how it used to be.
Having our world premiere of Boil Alert at TIFF this, like in a week or so, like we're on the countdown. I'm pretty pumped about that. And yeah, I was just like, it turned out amazing. You know, I watched it the other night and I just was like, wow, you know, like people will not be able to unsee this. People will not be able to unhear those stories and that understanding of what is the reality right now, not like 20, 30, 50 years ago, but right now in our Indigenous communities, in these First Nations reserves all around Turtle Island. So we went all over United States, Canada, West, East, North, and yeah, it's interesting. Each story is different, but there you see the parallels. You see the impacts of, you know, colonization.
Well, and the thing that really strikes me, so when I watched this, I couldn't help but think, like, not only all over Turtle Island, you know, north or south of this crazy border, you've got Native American tribes, you've got First Nations suffering many of the same things. But then you also look at water as this metaphor, but also a reality for what colonization has done to the land, in the sense of all of the land destruction and contamination, what they've done to us in terms of, all of the starvation rations, all of the ill health, all of the garbage that they want you to put into your body today. And I just think it's really, this documentary is going to sum up the whole thing all in one, but through the lens of water, which I can't help but think our body is water, like our blood cells are water. Our babies come from water, that it's so critical to life as we know it. I mean, when you were done filming this, I mean, even before you put the edit together, I mean, because, it must have just hurt your heart to do edits. I mean, I can't imagine what that felt like, but how did that change you when it was all done, all the filming was done? What kind of core messages or themes did you come away with?
Honestly, the biggest lesson that I learned is that I am enough as I stand here, knowing that sense of purpose and power that we all have. We all have a gift. We all have a purpose. And I think that Indigenous communities, and you think of the grandmas and the aunties, like they were actually, it was part of their responsibility to understand and recognize the gifts of the children and guide them on those paths. So I think that was the biggest thing, was like, I have this ability to connect with people, to let them into my own struggles, and to do it in a way that that inspires them to see the strength in themselves. And so when it was done, I'm not going to lie, I was also angry. There was an anger in there, seriously, every time. And then I was like, you know what, that anger, we have to channel that into something that people can understand. Because if we're just angry at people all the time and we're just, mad about what has happened, people will not receive it the same way. So I was like, you know what, that's also one of my skills, is I'm able to be able to share this love and this hope and this future where, we can heal, where we can thrive, where we can, reconnect with the land, with the water, and we can use that connection to actually take action on change. And I think that was that one point in the film where I'd, seen so many stories, and I was like, you know what, we got to do something. We got to stand up for this fight. And that kind of led us out west to that journey that you've seen some of it, but you see a lot more inside of that experience as well within the film. So yeah, I feel like when it was done, I was really relieved, but also a new element of fear. There's like this new element. And now that I've seen it, and now that I know the world's going to see it, there's this other element of fear. But it's, again, we feel the fear and we do it anyways. We feel the fear and we know that that's something that's going to change us. That's something that's going to help us to be stronger and grow. So go there. Don't take the easy way. Don't take the, don't take the back road, but, put it right out there. So that's kind of where I was at. I was like, okay, let's put it out there. Let's make it happen. And it was done in such a beautiful way. I'm so grateful for the team that put the film together. And, every scene is just stunning and emotional and raw at the same time. And it's really a hybrid documentary, probably not like anything anybody's ever seen before.
Yeah, well, I'm really struck by, even just in the trailer, there's your personal journey, which itself is a story. There's the issue of like the importance of water. That's a story. There's this like commonality between all these First Nations and Native Americans. That's a story. And then, I'm also struck by what was happening in Wet'suwet'en territory. What was the chronology of that? Had you started this documentary and then boom, everything is heating up and we're all Wet'suwet'en strong across the country? Or did that start first and then the documentary? How did that come together?
Yeah, the documentary started first. So that was where I went. I started flying to all these places and then came home and my brother's like, well, they're calling for, you know, solidarity at West and they need us to show up and they need us to stand up. And I was just at this point where like, I'm like, yeah, I'm not just going to sit here. And I'm like, let's go, let's bring cameras, let's go, let's capture this moment. And I remember being at the Winziqua, their sacred headwaters, this river that's under attack, and putting it to my lips and drinking directly from the river. And I'd never done that before in my life. And most of us never will drink from a fresh source river. And the moment it touched my lips, it was like electricity. It was like thunder, like lightning all over my body. I was like, oh my gosh, this water is alive. I feel it. It's inside of me. It's speaking to me. It's calling me. This is what water's supposed to be like. And why are we destroying this? Knowing my river at home is, just beyond repair. There's no bringing it back from the pollution and from the damage that's been done. So here's this river. And yeah, it was just like this moment in the film and this moment in my life where I had to ask myself some really hard questions of what I was willing to do for what I believed in and what I knew was right and whose laws I was going to live my life by. And yeah, so, and then we came home and there was some pretty, powerful moments of when, our nations, the Haudenosaunee and the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs, come together. And it's just so incredibly powerful. I feel like there was all these guides telling me, in my life, like you're meant to go there. You're meant to sit with this person. You're meant to hear this story. And I'm like, okay, I keep hearing that in my head, like every single time. So it was just constantly confirming that, I had to complete it. I had to finish it, even when it was hard, because there was a lot of personal things in the film. As you mentioned at the beginning of filming, my name was Layla Black. At the end of the film, my name was Layla Staats, and I had taken my name back and separated in my marriage, and all this stuff had happened in this growth process of this film. So it's like putting your whole life out there and being able to know that it's meant to be there. I was meant to go through that. I was meant to feel those things, and the fact that we could put that in a film that inspires people and gets people to truly follow their purpose, for me that's worth any amount of fear or anything. And yeah, so I'm really excited for people to see it. I'm a little anxious, but I also know, like, these stories, like you say to someone, where's Neskantaga? And they've never heard of it before. This is the longest running boil water advisory in our country for 27 years, and nobody knows about it at all. So after this film, you will definitely know about it. After this film, you will not forget the word Grassy Narrows. After this film, you will know who Molly Wickham is. After this film, you will be changed. So that's, everything that happened in it, all the growth and struggle and stumbles and self-doubts, like, it was meant to happen. So we're here now, and we're like on the eve, the week before it premieres, and then I can't wait for people to share how it impacted them and see them take change. Like, a lot of people ask me, well, what can I do? I'm just one person. I had a grade 5 girl. I was doing a workshop for grade 5s, and she said, Layla, I'm only grade 5. I don't have any political contacts. How can I help these people? And I was like, you know what? There's probably a lot of grown-ups out there that feel the same way. And just you being here and you being able to hear these stories, have them change you, and share your story about that change, share your action. When I hear something coming from someone I know and love and trust, it's different than if I just saw it on my own. So you kind of can be that bridge to people. And I think that matters. And then, like we said, showing up, There are some opportunities for us to rise up, to use our voices. There's some really big projects that are going to have detrimental effects to Indigenous communities in Northern Ontario, and our waters. Like if nothing else, be selfish for your own survival of having water. I remember, do you remember in the pandemic when we ran out of toilet paper?
Yes.
And there was like a toilet paper shortage. People were fighting over it. They were hoarding it. I mean, there was like this sense of fear and panic over toilet paper. So imagine that in your life, that's water. And it's the same thing, only a limited supply. The rich people are hoarding it all. People are fighting for it. And we're like, oh my God, that's so scary. But that's a reality. That's a reality right now. In Niskandiga, they're on a 1.5 liter water ration per person per day. 1.5 liters per day. And it's like, and nobody knows about it. Nobody knows about it. And you think about the social impacts that has. It's not just their health, but their mental health. I sat down with the chief, Chris Munoz, and they're in a state of emergency, not because of the water, but because of the youth suicide levels. And that was something that in the film, it really hit me hard, was the youth suicide, and hearing these stories of kids that feel like they don't exist, kids that feel like they don't matter. And we had one of the young ladies that was in the film, ended up taking her life before she even got to see it. So it rocked me really hard, and I was like, I almost was like, we can't do it. Like, we can't do it anymore because she took her life. And then I just had this moment again of, no, we have to do it. We have to tell her story. We have to make sure that her voice is heard in this film. And it is just a proof of the urgency of our children in these communities. And no child deserves to feel like they don't exist in this country. And yeah, so there's some really hard moments. I cried many times watching it over again. And but they're feelings, they're emotions that you will never be able to unfeel, and they will change your actions forever, and your perspective, and how you operate in this country called so-called Canada. And you can't ignore it anymore. And that's what this film is here. It is an alert. We are on alert. You cannot ignore this. Yeah, I'm yeah. Sorry, that was I'm like, do I talk about Nora? Do I talk about her? Because she was so beautiful. And we kept in touch after the film, and kept in touch on Instagram. And then when I got that news, it was devastating, but it was also like this fire in me is like, she needs to be heard. And these kids, they need this film to be heard. They need it to make a difference. And no, Layla, you gotta be strong. You gotta go out there. You gotta talk the hard stuff. You gotta say the hard stuff. You gotta feel the hard stuff, so that people get this. And yeah, so we're really optimistic that this is a film that will change your life.
Well, I already feel transformed just by this conversation, knowing what's going to be in it, the little bit that I've seen about it, read it, knowing that what the situation is across the country, and knowing that it has real life impact. This isn't some fictional Hollywood movie that's all made up for glory. This is literally life and death on the ground, life and death for the planet, life and death for that poor young girl. And I'm always glad when people can show their feelings, because if we care and love them and grieve for them and celebrate with them, who else is going to do it? Because historically it hasn't been, the colonizers. So I think it's important. I think this film is not just going to be educational. I think it's the two most important things. Yes, education, but for action. Don't just watch it and be moved or inspired. Take action. That's what transformation is about. And the fact that you have just been brave enough to go through your own personal journey and show the rest of us, yeah, it's okay when a relationship doesn't work out. Yeah, it's okay if we make mistakes. Yeah, it's okay if we don't feel like we're native enough. All of these things are just journeys, and we need to help each other along that path. And I just feel like your film is just going to say so many things to so many people that really need to hear it. I think this is like the spark, that'll help just plant those seeds and create the change, because none of us are going to be living on this planet without healthy water. And the last thing we need is for a bunch of rich people hoarding toilet paper and water in the future. So I can't thank you enough. I was literally going to say, what advice do you have for young kids who want to do these things? But I feel like you've already talked about that. But if there's anything else, like if there's young Native folks listening to this podcast and wondering, oh, but am I going to be enough? Do I have the knowledge, the power, the resources, the ideas to make a film, or to go into music, or to be a land defender, but they're not sure? What kind of advice would you give them?
Honestly, the advice that I have for you is that you, as you are enough. We think we need all these things. We need to learn this. We need to do this. We need to, I need to be able to say this. I need to be able to have this outfit and these mocks and I need to have this gear. I got to have professional cameras, and I got to have the most $5,000 MacBook Pro. Like, you really, it's inside of you as you are. And I think that that's what makes our story so powerful, is because we tell it like it is. We speak from where we are, and there is no sort of like Hollywood hype around it. It's real and raw, and that's where our society needs to go back to, especially in the world of documentaries and entertainment and film, is back to this reality, not reality TV like Too Hot to Handle, but reality, of our heart to heart moments. So honestly, find if you're afraid to share your own story at first, find someone that inspires you and start working on their story, and see how simple it can be. Like, if you have a smartphone, you can make a movie. You can do it. And that our social outlets, all of these streaming platforms, they are just, they really are looking for Indigenous storytellers. So the time is now. There's a big opportunity for storytellers that have that authenticity, that have that heart and fire and desire. And just seeing how much it helps these kids go through a workshop to make a 5-minute little story about their life. It gave them that validation. It gave them that respect of each other's stories, and also knowing that there was power in theirs. So, and again, reach out to me. I'm like a real person on Instagram, on Facebook or whatever. I'm not, up there in some fancy castle. I'm just a chick out there trying to make a difference. And yeah, send me a message. I'll help you in any way I can. I really appreciate the people that have helped me. So being able to be someone that can, just give you freaking pat on the back when you need it, and pull you up and say, hey, try again. Even though you failed, try again. That can, save us sometimes. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on here, Pam. I'm really honored that, you're excited about the film, and you're spreading the word. And, I appreciate everything that you do to tell these stories, to be, that amplification of Indigenous voices.
Well, I'm honored to do it. I can't believe I get to be a part of it. I was so happy to talk to you when we were talking about the Wet'suwet'en and 1492 Land Back Lane back then. But boy, I didn't know that you were on this mission, and what a powerful mission it is. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing. I'll post links to everything that I have in the podcast description, in the YouTube description. We'll share it widely. Thank you to all the listeners and the watchers for taking the time to listen to hear Layla's voice. She has a lot of knowledge and wisdom and experience and vulnerabilities and lessons to learn and really good advice. So share this podcast far and wide. And don't forget to support Indigenous creatives wherever you can. Buy tickets to their films, go to their films, buy their artwork, attend their concerts, make donations. Like, there's a million ways that you can support Indigenous creatives. So important that you do this, because really we're all working towards saving humanity and plant life and animal life and life on the planet. So thank you. And don't forget to check out Warrior Kids podcast. It's starting a new season and the ongoing season of Criminals on Patrol, shining a light on police criminality, corruption, and cover-ups, especially when it comes to Native people and their engagements with Native people. You don't want to miss those podcasts. Till next time, keep living a warrior life. Walalia. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting my podcast. Your donations help me keep the Warrior Life podcast open access to everyone and free from those annoying ads. And it's super simple. Just click on the link below to sign up for a Patreon monthly or yearly subscription, or click the links for the Buy Me a Coffee app or the Ko-fi app to make one-time contributions. And if you belong to an awesome community group, business, or organization that's committed to Indigenous reconciliation, consider sponsoring an episode or two, or as many as you like. Thank you for helping me lift the voices of Indigenous warriors doing phenomenal things to help make our world a better place.